Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to Career Insights 501. Today we have Angelic Williams with us, and she is a serial entrepreneur, and she's going to talk to us about her varied careers and what she has going on today. So, Angelique, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Hey, no problem. So, how have you been doing?
I finally landed. I've been doing a lot of traveling and I'm at home for 6 weeks and I'm very excited to not get on a plane. The jet setter life sounds fun as a kid until you do it and then it
Yeah,
does a lot to you.
traveling can be, it does, yeah. Traveling can be quite the task sometimes, or a pain sometimes, depending on how much of it you have to do. Um,
Mhm.
So, could you start off by telling the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So again, my name's Angelic Williams. I go by Angelique or Angie. My background, I'm a San Francisco native. I am an ultra chameleon because I am the youngest of 11 children. I have five older brothers and five older sisters.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yes, so that is survival mode in its highest capacity. Um, and so, because of that, I
Mhm.
think that's lent itself to sort of having a different, varied career set because I've had 10 larger than life personalities around me. I tell people I was raised by wolves because I was. But my background is in architecture. Listen, you had to be there. My background is in architecture. That's what my bachelor's is in. My master's in real estate development. I did my master's in New York City. I moved back to the Bay Area. I did that. I did workforce housing, affordable housing, market rate housing. But I am a creative person by nature. And the only reason I went to grad school was because I have a nerve disorder in my hand. So I can't draft full time because I can lose all feeling in my hand. So didn't want to do that, but I found out one semester left in school, which wonderful timing. Um, and so I went to real estate development, good at it, very good at it, but incredibly boring. And so while I was doing development, I started my own company. It was an app called My Umbrella for the queer community. It was basically like a queer Facebook. Transitioned that to a blog in 2020 when the pandemic started. I've worked at a national nonprofit that supports queer entrepreneurs with mentorship, access to capital, helping them grow their businesses. Um, and then last year, um, a year ago tomorrow, the sky fell and my mom died, and
Oh,
everything
sorry to hear that.
changed. Yeah, it was. Um, I've battled a lot of things and a lot of goals and overcome a lot of adversity, and grief is my greatest opponent. I've yet to beat it, and so I just
Hmm.
work with it the best that I can. And so, yeah, I quit my job. I moved to Florida. I live by the beach now. I relax. Um, it forced me to finish a novel I was working on because why not? And also develop a course on toxic ambition to help people like me that have so many passions and are so creative and drive themselves into the ground for said passions when that is not actually necessary. But we do it because as creative people, we kind of don't know any other way but to go all in on it. But when you do that, you risk
Hmm.
everything here: your health, your emotions, your finances, your mental state. So that's a roundabout way to say, hi, I'm Angie. This is me.
Great introduction. That was a lot. I wanted to ask you about, you said toxic ambition, correct?
Yes.
And you created a course around that. I don't know. For me, it's just like, I feel like it's kind of like personal. I feel like I don't necessarily want to say that I'm toxically ambitious, but I kind of get where you're coming from. But I want to say, do you think that people who are creative, who are stuck in I guess corporate roles struggle a lot creatively because I find my job like really boring compared to what I thought I would be doing, and just kind of like sitting at a computer all day, clicking and dragging a couple of things and going to meetings, and it's just kind of like, oh my God, how do I get out of this? So, were you ever at that? Like, what was that? Pretty much you?
Oh my God, yes. January 2022, I lost my voice for a week because I had 34 meetings in 8 business days,
Oh wow.
and my voice just it left. Like it just completely just tapped out. It was like, nah, we're not doing this. But I absolutely do think that
Mm,
creative people in general do struggle in corporate environments because what inspires us doesn't exist in a cubicle. You know, you have to go outside, you
mm,
have to, go look at art, you have to interact with people, you have to travel and see things, you have to go explore or, listen to music or whatever it is. And that's what, at least in my experience and
mhm,
people that I know, provides that creative spark and that joy. And when you're sitting in the same four walls, clicking and living inside of a screen that isn't, Canva or Illustrator or After Effects, it's literally your email
mhm.
and the internet and documents that you have to read and
Yeah,
sign probably. that's that's not
yeah,
sparking any creativity except how can I get out of work today? How can I go home? Like, or if you really hate your job, how can I get
yeah.
fired? Like, like that's so that's the only creativity you have is how can I still get paid while still making them want
Yeah,
to fire
escape
me
plan.
very, very soon. so so yeah, I absolutely agree. That was my life for sure.
Yeah. So I do want to go back and talk about your education a little bit more because you said architecture and then grad school was what again?
Real estate development.
Real estate development. Okay. So those two things correlate. How was college for you?
Oh man. Um College for me. So I went to an art school. Architecture is considered the art of buildings. Um, Architecture,
Hmm.
some in some edition in the past decade, architecture was listed in the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's hardest major. So yay, I have a record along with a million other schmucks that have the same degree and suffered. But that's fine. So what that meant for me was I had 12 to 15-hour days at school all the time, working constantly. I didn't have the traditional college party life that just didn't exist at our school. So it was always being in studio, always working. I worked part time during school. I took summer classes. I took weekend classes. I did too much in college. That wasn't enjoying college. I just did all of the things. I was just always in a rush to get there, whatever there is, right? Air quotes. Um, I had my first shot of you need to slow down when I was 19, and I had a tumor, and I found it myself, and then I told my mom, and my family has a history of breast cancer, so we said we gotta go. So I went to the doctor, and she's like, "What's your major?" She's like, "You need to calm down." I'm like, "Do you know what my major is? That's not possible." And she's like, "Well, you
All
should,
right.
because you know, do you want to live or do you want to do your assignment?" And I was like, "Oh, well, okay." So we got it taken
That's
out,
a way to
and that
put
was
it.
kind of my first. I mean, she's a very good surgeon, very hard nosed. And I said, "If you had a daughter my age, what would you do?"
Hmm.
And she said, "I do have a daughter your age, and I would take it out." And I said, "Okay, we're taking it out. Let's go." Um,
Hmm.
and that was my
Yeah.
first sort of wake up call. But clearly, I had to take a few more lumps on the way to have it really stick. A
Hmm.
tumor wasn't enough, apparently. The lifelong scar I have from this was not enough for me to realize you need to take your foot off the gas some. So it was I would
Yeah.
like to say college was fun. We made fun from what we could, but I didn't really enjoy it as much as I think I could have.
Hmm. It wasn't like that TV or I guess movie experience that you see when people go to college and they have all the fun.
No, no, that was grad school. That was a very different.
Oh,
That was very different.
okay. I think we're on the
Oh
same page
man.
with that because my undergrad, I went to like summer school every summer. I went to like some Maymesters. I was taking like at least 18 hours. I changed my major like 5 times. So my undergrad years, I was like, man, I really didn't have like the college experience, kind of like a lot of people had. So I look back now and I kind of regret it because I don't really have all the cool stories that a lot of people had when they were in undergrad. So it's like, oh well,
Right, exactly. We
I got
have
all the
we have
debt with
nerdy
everybody
stories.
else. So right.
It's like,
um.
oh,
So I guess that I guess that really didn't translate too much into your work since you are a self-proclaimed serial entrepreneur. Um, could you talk a little bit more about your different entrepreneur endeavors that you've had over the years?
yes, yes, I can. And to explain some of the later things, we kind of got to back all the way up to like childhood. So
Okay.
I adored Robin Williams and Lucille Ball growing up. Those are my favorite humans. Still, some of my favorite
Mm,
humans to ever walk the planet. I got to meet Robin once, actually,
mm-hmm.
twice. Actually, I made him laugh. I could die then. My life would have been
Oh,
perfect.
nice.
Um, but I wanted to
We're
be an
glad that didn't
actress.
happen.
Yes, me too, I guess. Yeah, but I wanted to be an actress growing up, and I would watch scenes and I would reenact them. But then when I went to watch like TV is fine, but I really want to be in movies. And when I watched movies, the only people that had the same skin tone as me was Halle Berry and Gabrielle Union. And I was like, oh well,
Mm,
that's not me. So I guess I can't do that. So I like
mm,
switched and went into like writing and wanted to be a director. And I had this fear that a lot of creatives do, that they'll run out of creativity. And so whatever. Anyway, so that
mm,
got dropped out. But yeah, so my moving forward into adulthood, I majored in architecture. Like I said, I had that freak injury, so I have an ulnar nerve issue, so I can't draft. And so I tried to defy my doctors and practice it anyway. That did not work. They are right. I would have killed my hands. Um, to some extent, I did, but
mm-hmm.
you know, I learned the hard way, unfortunately. So yeah, I went to real estate development. While I
Mm,
was there, I started my app. What happened after that? I started my app. I wrote a queer romance novel while I was traveling in 2021. I built an online course about toxic ambition. And I most recently have gotten roped into building a safety app um, for college campuses to like report crime and provide a more safe space. On the side from that, I guess this is true. I also co-founded one of the founding chapters for Black Women Talk Tech, which is a national organization. And then most recently here, got roped into leadership for an affinity group called Black Girl Boss, which is a subcategory or subgroup of St. Pete Girl Boss, which is for female entrepreneurs. So a lot of random things, a lot of things that just kind
mm-hmm.
of happened and flowed. And I think there's a, at some point, I realized that yes, I've been classically trained to design and get buildings built, but I'm good at a lot of things. And just because I don't have a degree in those things doesn't mean I can't do it. So that is that's what I've learned. That's the
So,
biggest takeaway of being a serial entrepreneur is just like do it.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I would definitely think that's something. I mean, just where I'm at now with my thing, you just have to just do it and learn a lot of different things. I wanted to ask you though, how did you get into the app development? Was it just something you said, "Oh, I want to try to create an app," and you just did it?
So yes and no, yes and no. Um, I took a in high school. I took a coding class on Saturday for college credit because, of course, I did. You've been listening to the episode. Of course, I did that.
Why
Um,
not?
why not? Why not? And again, I learned that I'm good at coding, but I do not like doing it. I do not like doing it. And that was before you could put your code into a reader and it would tell you the error and you go fix it. No, no, no. This is back in the day when you had to like read the thousands of lines to find. No, wasn't for me. Um, and so when I was working in development, my boss wanted to create an app for intakes for our clients to make things more efficient. And so he told me, "Oh, you're smart enough. Go research this and put a spec together to build an app." So I said, "Okay." And so I did all the research. I did like the mock-ups and everything. I presented it to him, got bids for it, only for him to turn around and say, "We don't have the budget for this." After I spent like three
Oh God.
months doing this, like, sir, what? Again, how can I actively get
Yeah.
fired? That's where we started. But you know, but when it came to my app, so a couple of things happened. It was a really confluence of events. So I realized that I hated my job, like what I did and where I worked. I realized that. Two, I realized that I kind of lost my queer circle of friends just through growing up or apart or moving, whatever. And I was engaged at the time, not anymore, thankfully. I was engaged at the time, and the only place to meet people were at bars and on dating apps, which an engaged person shouldn't be spending their time there, at least significant amounts of time. And then my younger cousin
Right.
was tragically killed in June of 2016, yes. And I was thinking, like, there's losses you expect in life. Your grandparents are parents, but your siblings are kind of a crapshoot. Your cousins are a crapshoot. You know, he was 19. I was 26, and it was just
Yeah.
we had seen each other the day before. It was just bizarre. And I think about a week or
Mhm.
two later, um, Mike Pence became the vice presidential nominee. And at the time, he was one of the few politicians I knew outside of California and DC because of his anti LGBT stance. And I was
Mhm.
completely freaked out about this. And my friends, who were mostly straight, could not understand why I was freaked out. And at the time, I went online, I was looking, I just found people ranting on Twitter or ranting on Reddit. And I just like, I want to talk to these people, but I don't know how. And I don't know why it's so hard for me to find people that get what I'm talking about. And then I sat down and I said, well, we took coding. We know enough to be dangerous. We went to school to design, we as in my conscience and myself. We went to school
Yeah.
to learn how to design very well. We went to grad school to learn how to launch a venture. And you just wasted 3 months of your life specking out an app for your job. So, all of that together, you can do this. You can do this. This is
Yeah.
architecture. You draw a pretty picture and you make it stand in real life. That is literally the definition of architecture. That's what it is. And I come from a family of entrepreneurs, so I have a decent business mind just from watching it all. And so that's how we jumped into the wild world of apps. And for anybody out there, Jesus Christ, building an app is the most expensive way to start anything. I just Jesus, just save yourself. Save yourself. Like, do a web app, do a website. Just don't build them native. Unless you have a gajillion dollars. Do something that's cross-platform between Android and iOS. You didn't ask me for that advice, but I'm just going to give it because
No, I
good
think that's
God.
great advice.
Hi, this is Angelic Williams, and you're listening to Career Insights 501 with Dr. Loso.
Oh, I wanted to ask you, like, how did you cope with being stuck in like these different jobs that you didn't like?
I held on to goals that I was conditioned and raised to want. So I had a 10-year plan at 17. And again, you've been listening. Of course I did. Of course I had a 10-year plan at 17. I finished it when I was 23. So I made a 4-year plan because of course I
Wow.
did. Like, why wouldn't you just sit and be happy that you did the
Jesus.
things? Like, no, let's just move the goalpost. Let's just move it again. Like, you won the gold medal at the Olympics. Let's go to the intergalactic Olympics now. Like, let's go there. It's always doing too much. And so I made a 4-year plan. And part of that was, in the American lens, you're raised to, go to college, get a good job, buy a house, live in the suburbs, get married, white picket fence, 2 kids, a dog, that whole thing. And my family, I won't say my whole family, mostly my father and my father's side of the family. They're very money and image
Mhm.
focused. And we were raised to see that as the ultimate thing. And so I got laid off from my architecture job, and then I got my development job that paid me like, I don't know, like 50% more or something crazy. Eventually became double what I was making
Oh
as an
wow.
architect because architects don't get paid any money. Fun fact. Lots of torture, hardest major in the world, one of the worst starting salaries of a white collar job. And
Jesus.
I thought, oh, great. I can save for a house. And so I worked and I saved and I was super strict with myself because that was the goal, was to buy the house, was to buy the engagement ring, was to do all of those things. Um, and that's again, that's one of those, we talked about it earlier. Kind of how do you know if you're being toxic is you're holding on to something that drains you, but does the end justify the means? Like, did you really want that? You know what I mean? Did you really want this goal, or were you just
Yeah.
so focused and then you just got on the path and you stepped on the hamster wheel and now you're on the hamster wheel and you have no idea how to stop it and you're too afraid to jump off? And that
Yeah.
was my life. I know exactly what my life would have been if I had stayed in development. I know exactly the path, the titles, the salaries, all of those things. I know what it would have been. I would have never been ultra rich, but I never would have been poor. I would have been very comfortable and hyper stressed. And I
Yeah.
just don't want it.
Yeah.
I just don't.
So I know we had mentioned that briefly before, we started recording about, the expectations of what we're told that we want. How do you think that plays out in today's society versus maybe, or today's youth versus when you were growing up? Because I think for me, personally, I think that I always tell people it was just like go to college and this whole corporate um, thing to strive to. But I feel like maybe now younger generations aren't necessarily drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak, and they are looking for more fulfillment from life and not just work. But then you
Yeah.
get on Instagram and you see everybody in Gucci and LV, so I don't really know what's going on.
Yeah. It was funny. I was actually talking to a colleague earlier just about millennials and Gen Z. And I personally hate the phrase millennial. I just feel like we just skipped Y for no reason.
Hmm.
You have Gen X and then Gen
Exactly.
Z, and then we're just,
Why did you
why
skip
do
Y?
it's it's like millennial makes it sound like I was born in 2000. I wasn't. I was born in the 80s. Give me some respect,
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
but that's a different podcast for a different day. Um, but it's interesting. You know, my colleague Kristen and I were just talking, and she said, we're the first generation that wants to break the cycle, that's trying to actively heal, that's trying to really ask why instead of just doing as we're told and then never questioning it. Our parents did, and some of them did. Some of them did the work and broke out, but a lot of them, they stayed at a job they hated for 40 years. It never appreciated them because it's what you did. You stayed in a marriage that was awful for your
Right.
kids because that's what you did, you know? And so we
Hmm.
have the benefit of choice. And I feel that our disadvantage is that we don't have anybody to look to. We didn't have our parents to show us how to do that. We have each other fumbling through this healing process.
Yeah.
But then you have Gen Z, because we were born with pre-internet, post-internet, and then
Mm-hmm.
social media. Like I know how to use a rotary phone.
Mm-hmm.
I know I called Mr. Movie Phone. I know
Exactly.
all the things. Like it's just all of these little. I remember Fandango with the popcorn bags when that first came out. Like caller ID.
Yeah.
It was just amazing. The obsession with like clear phones and
Star
things
six
like that. It
nine.
was yes, star 6 9, star 6 7, stealth 3-way calling. It was amazing. It's what a time to be alive. Just any
What a
Gen Z's
time.
listening today, yeah, any Gen Z people listening to this, just know that if Twitter had been popping when Flavor of Love was on MTV, the internet would have broken. Would have it wouldn't even
Right.
exist because it was such a phenomenon that only we remember. There's no historical tweets to talk about it. It's just our memory. It's amazing. But Gen Z,
Just our
they're
memories.
born with they're born with a microphone. They're born with Instagram. They're born
Mm-hmm.
with Snapchat. They're born with TikTok. And to some extent, they have the greatest double-edged sword because while we don't have a blueprint on how to heal and choose our own path, they both have like equal opportunity to kind of carve out whatever niche they really want for themselves. But because of that, they also fall prey to that sin of comparison in that you know, for me, I see, oh, someone at 28 did blah, blah, blah. And I feel kind of shitty. Like, oh my God, they're 5 years younger than me and they did that. But for them, it's like, oh, this
Yeah.
12-year-old is a millionaire. It's you shouldn't be stressed about
Right.
this at 12. Like, like that wasn't, I don't even know what I was stressed out about when I
Yeah.
was 12, but it wasn't about being an influencer. And
Yeah.
so on one hand, they have
Right.
so many different opportunities, but I think there's a harder sense of individuality of, if I don't do
Mm-hmm.
this, I'm not with the group. But if I do this, then I'm not as good as like the upper tier of the group. So they're kind of really between a rock and a hard place of being a loner or
Mm-hmm.
being another Instagram model or TikToker or NFT or whatever they're doing now. So
Yeah.
it's tough. I don't in some ways socially some things have gotten so much easier for them, but then in a lot of ways
Mm-hmm.
career wise and money wise it's gotten so much harder.
Mm-hmm. I love the way that you put that when you said, like our generation, the millennials, we were the first to break that cycle. So I tell people this all the time. And I just had a guest on here a couple of weeks ago, and I told them that um, I feel like our generation is a transitional generation because, like to your point, we were the first to start questioning the traditions and norms and breaking away from those things, and we grew up with all the old school stuff and transitioned with the technology into where it's at now. But it wasn't our life. We were still doing the old school stuff. We were doing our thing, and then we were uh, doing the new school stuff to some extent as well. Or we could see kind of like where the younger generation are coming from with some of the issues. But I didn't think about that whole like mending piece and like helping each other cope with it. So I think that's a great thing to point out because a lot of times, yeah, like the older generation don't really get where we're coming from sometimes, and then the younger generation thinks that we're just old dinosaurs. It's like, why are you doing that, or why don't you just do that? So they don't really get the whole struggle of trying to break away from
Mm-hmm. Yeah, why
the
don't you
tradition.
just
So yeah, I
that's the
definitely agree
phrase,
with
why don't
you.
you just
Yeah,
why don't I just I don't know
exactly.
trauma. Unlike you, like we like unlike us, you haven't had to go through a terror like have memories of a terrorist attack, a recession, a global
Mhm.
pandemic, another recession, on three-ish wars and constant nuclear threats. Like
Right.
you grew up with Yo Gabba Gabba. Like, fam, calm it down. Like, you're fine. Like the pandemic is actually probably the first big thing to affect you. We're on like crisis 4. there shouldn't be that
Yeah.
much in 2 decades. Like, not for one generation trying to grow up. That's
Right.
insane.
Half our lives. Um, so I want to go back to your app, your LGBTQ plus app. Um,
Mhm.
you mentioned earlier that it went from an actual app to a blog. So what happened in between that process? Was it just too much to maintain? Because I know you went and talked about how much, resources it takes to build a native app.
Yeah, it is incredibly expensive to build and maintain and kind of push, along with all the fees and things like that. But what really happened was it was 2019. I was building the
Mm-hmm.
app. We had great traction. We were going into this B2B model. I was having meetings with Procter and Gamble and all these other large organizations,
Oh,
and it
wow.
was going well. And I was so unhappy with the direction. Like, I'm like, oh, it's finally getting the traction I want, but I don't think I like this. And I didn't know how to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And what ended up happening was, I had another freak accident. This time I actually know how. I was axe throwing. Um, and I threw my axe too hard because I was full of a lot of rage around the way my life was going. And I felt like a little pop in my leg, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't think too much about it. But a couple of weeks later, I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
stand up. I couldn't walk. I was in so much pain. Um, and I was on the couch for 6 months. I could not do anything. I had a torn pelvic ligament. It is so painful. So
Mm-hmm.
painful. 0 out of 5 stars. Do not recommend. It's awful.
Sounds like it.
Um, yeah. And at that
Zero
time,
out of five
I
stars.
zero, -1. But like at the time, I was laying down and I was thinking, but just about my life, just where I had, I couldn't get off the wheel. The wheel threw me off. And I was thinking about my life and how I got here and
Mm-hmm.
all the different steps. And I wasn't happy and I was going to shut my company down. And literally, I had the paperwork printed out. I signed it, and it was like December 20 something. And I had to mail it before the 31st because then you get taxed for the next year. And literally, I was just in too much pain to get myself to my car and go to the mailbox. And so, you know, I'm driven by money in the frugal way, not in the accumulation, in the expenditure. So since I was paying my taxes for 2020 now I had to. Um, I sat on it, put it on the shelf. The pandemic started, and my friends in tech were hitting me up saying, "Hey, this is the time. If you really want connection, you shouldn't dump it, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "I don't know." And I looked at it and I said, "Did I try everything? If I tried everything and it didn't work, I can walk away knowing I left it on the field." And I didn't try the one thing that I originally wanted to do, which people that were quote unquote smarter than me and more experienced at the time said wouldn't work. And that was having it as a blog. And a blog was much cheaper. I know how to build websites, did a whole redesign of the site, built it from a landing page to download an app to a fully built out blog with guest writers and categories and things like that. And we launched it. And it was, lo and behold, it was successful. And I could have saved myself a lot
Nice.
of money and pain had I done that the first time. But that's how that transition happened. I was literally done. I had made peace with it. I had accepted it,
Mm-hmm.
and then we decided to breathe one last, you know, pump of life into it to see what happened. And people loved it. Long form expression is not dead, despite what people tell you.
Mm-hmm. And that's still up and going now?
It's still up. It's still live. I have sat on it since my mom died. Um, I'm
Mm-hmm.
still deciding if I want to revive it in active submissions in the future. I'm waiting for that answer to come to me. I don't want to make any brash decisions or spin myself up in too much responsibility again. Um, but even if it does not
Mm-hmm.
ever come back live, I believe in paying for the hosting and the domain. till I die, because I think a lot of these stories are still
All right.
very valid. We still have a lot of people coming to visit and, hear stories about transitioning or coming out in a small town or overseas, and it still adds value. And so I think whether or not it comes to life
Mm-hmm.
again, it will always have its footprint in place on the internet. So
Mm-hmm.
TBD.
Did you want to tell the name of it?
It's My Umbrella. You can
It's
find it at
TBB.
myumbrella.co. Hmm?
Okay. Cool. And I can drop a link to that too in the description when I do all this stuff, so they can go and check it out. People can go and check it out and read what's up there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of good content. A lot of
Now
good
I'm looking
content. A
at
lot of
your.
great writers.
Okay. I'm looking at your profile, and you were honored in the May-June issue of 2002 issue of Essence magazine. That's quite a feat. I feel like Essence used to be such a big cultural thing for the Black people back in the day with the magazine. I feel like it was
Mm-hmm.
one of the few like quality magazines that were put out for us, or I guess they all were. I don't want to diminish any, but you get what I'm saying. Like one of the more elite
Mm-hmm.
Black magazines.
Yeah. Every
So
Black
you want to
household
talk
had
about that a little
it.
bit? Yep.
Yeah. It was honestly, I was doing another interview today, and we are talking about legacy. And I think about that more than the
Hmm.
average person, especially as a child. I thought about it a lot. Um, and my grandparents used to live by this phrase that live in such a way that if someone talks badly about you and you're not in the room, the person listening doesn't believe it. And I've always held on to that, of how do you live that life? And I've always tried to be super generous, super authentic with my connections. I don't like to be transactional unless it's purely transactional. But if there's another human in a relationship there to be nurtured, that's what I'm going to do. If I'm buying, shoes at Nike, like, I mean, this is just transactional. Like, have a good day, cashier. But like, we don't need
Yeah.
to go deeper. Um, but um, Essence, it was bizarre. So that was a really weird time of my life. My mom had just gone into the hospital in February of last year, and I got an email from a writer at Essence, and it said, "Hi, you." It was me and two other people that I knew, or one person I knew, one person I didn't know. And I was reading who it was from, and I remember getting the email and said, "Oh, you've been selected for this. We'd love to feature you." And I remember thinking, like, "Is this a joke? Is this a prank?" I like looked at the email and everything. I looked her up on LinkedIn. I'm like, this isn't real. Like, someone's gonna steal my card information somehow or hack my computer. Um, and Essence has a partnership with New Voices, and New Voices is a spinoff of 1863 uh, Ventures and Richard Lee Dennis, who's the founder of Shea Moisture, and Melissa Bradley is the managing partner at 1863. And her and I got to know each other because I was selected for a pitch competition at a conference. And we got to
Hmm.
know each other, got to talking, we collaborated, we've connected on things. And I hadn't talked to Melissa in about a year, maybe. And when I saw this, I thought,
Hmm.
this is Melissa. Like, Melissa remembered me. Melissa wanted to give me that feature. And I shout out to Melissa Bradley. She's one of the most amazing people of all time. Um, And what's the funniest thing about that feature was my friend's kids. My friend's kids at the time, they were 9 and 5, and
Hmm.
the youngest one thought I was famous, and the oldest one wanted to know how I knew Cardi B because Cardi B was on the cover of that issue. I was like, these kids have a great idea of who I am. Like, I want to let the way they see me, I want to see me that way. But it was
Right.
awesome. It was awesome to literally go to the store. It's like when you're a kid, you imagine that moment. At least some kids do. But you go to the store, you find the magazine, you flip to the page, and there you are. There you are. And that was That was super cool.
Yeah.
It was one of those things that, you know, I think that's the only thing I wish my mom had got to see because she loved reading Essence,
Mm.
loved it.
Yeah.
But I remember I got an advanced copy before it came out, and her casket had a little keepsake thing, and so I put it in there.
Mm.
So, but I think that's my only
Oh,
thing
nice.
that grinds me up about that. But it was
Mm-hmm.
definitely highlight of life, and I think when you are creative and you put yourself out there in any capacity, I don't care what it is, um, you open yourself up to scrutiny. And you can have people hating on
Mm-hmm.
you saying, oh, it wasn't that successful, or oh, you didn't do this. But what you can always say is, I did the thing. I didn't just talk about it with my
Yeah.
friends. I didn't just like rage tweet about
Mm-hmm.
it. I did the thing. And for me, I can always say, like,
Mm-hmm.
I was in a national magazine, bro. This is amazing.
Yeah.
This is amazing. This is like, this is a peak moment. So, but it was definitely a surreal encounter. And I didn't tell anybody when it was happening um, until it happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were all like, what? I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, so that was a really fun experience and a testament to being true to yourself and being authentic and being genuine because that
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have happened without Melissa and that wouldn't have happened without our connection and our camaraderie. So be nice to people.
Yeah. That's definitely an important thing. You definitely just in general be nice to people, but I think you get a lot of opportunities and things that you would never think or thought that you would be a part of by being nice to people. And so I try to tell people, some people that, but they don't really take what I
Mm-hmm.
say into consideration. It's still just evil. Um, uh, I wanted to ask you, did you want to talk about your book a little bit more? Because I wrote a book, so I wanted to hear from you, like, what was that experience like? Because I know you took some time off to, I guess, do life, and then you came back and finished it. But what was that process? Because my book is more like a textbook. So, how was it writing a novel?
I think of all the things that have happened to me in the past, call it 5 years, pandemic excluded, I
Mm,
think that's the craziest, most surprising thing to happen. Um, because I wrote a lot
mm.
growing up, and I actually had a book deal when I was 17 for a totally different story. Um,
Oh
and
my
I
God,
can't,
this
I can't tell you
Angelique, what?
why. I've had a weird life. It's been bizarre, but I can't tell you why I didn't sign the book deal. But I was 17. I needed my parents' signature, and at the time, I was I insulated myself
Hmm.
from my family, and so I didn't want to do it.
Oh, okay.
And I've always kicked myself about that. And at some point, as you adult, life changes. Your focus changes, and I started to tell myself that I don't have any more stories to tell. I wrote articles for the blog, but that's different. That's sort of anecdotal things. But a full fiction story, I didn't really think that I had anything in there. And they always say that art tends to come from pain, and so a heartbreak
Mhm.
and a deep crush and a Louis Capaldi song sort of spawned this book, and it was cathartic in the craziest way possible. It is dedicated to my exes, good and bad, because something that happened between each of us appears at some point in that book. Some very, very subtly,
Mhm.
and some like, ooh, this is a deep cut. I know exactly who that is. Like my friends would know who that is. Um, but it was a fun process because I got to create. Before we started, I told you that I would have been a performance painter if I didn't have a dad that was obsessed
Mhm.
with making money. And, I wish I had this confidence and the super swagger that a few drinks, a few liquid courage, I could do it. But just every day plain me, no, I'm such an awkward turtle. I'm just such an awkward turtle. It's embarrassing. Um, and so I created this character, Viv, who embodies exactly that. It's exactly who I thought I would be when I grew up. Just a total badass character.
Ah.
Um, but her love interest, Ryan represents the little girl that I was growing up. Ryan has a very
Mhm.
uh, misogynist father who wishes that he had a son instead of a daughter, which is why her name's Ryan, because he was not giving up that name that he wanted. Um,
Mhm.
and it's really about Viv coming from this ultra liberal, free spirited, free flowing kind of life, and Ryan coming from this very conservative, sort of closed off, sort of narrow life. And that's the love story. And so it's really a love story between my outside self and my inside self, which, as a writing process, wildly
Mhm.
confusing. Wildly confusing. I'm like, I'm losing my mind. I don't know who's talking now, but I have to think as both me's and make this story
Yeah.
work. But it's a love letter to San Francisco, my hometown. It's a love letter to New York City, uh, where I went to grad school. It's a thank you next. That is the politest way I can say that to my exes. Um,
Okay.
and and it's a story about the lies we tell ourselves. At the end of the day, it's a love story, but
Mhm.
it's really about the stories we create and the narratives we create, which influence our decisions for better and for worse. It's called Immersive Love. I will also give you that link. It's immersivelovebook.com. It's there. I think it's great. There are also a lot of very steamy scenes in there that are written by women for women. So just FYI, it's very different. It's very accurate. So just throwing it out there. It's not for it's PG-13. Let's put it that way. It's PG-13.
Okay. Cool. Cool. It sounds very interesting. I always love the creative thought that goes behind like a lot of art, or most art. I guess it's not art if it doesn't have a creative intentions behind it or some type of symbolic. Um but so and people interpret things different way when you put it out there. So some people might read it and it'd be very literal for them, but you explaining the thought process behind it and what your intentions were and all that stuff. It sounds very interesting. So I'm gonna have to get a copy and check it out.
Yep, yep. I'll be happy to send you one.
Okay. Um, is there anything that you want to touch on? I know we talked about a lot of different things here today.
I think I think maybe just a small touch on North Star and just
Okay.
changing career paths or changing. I think that's probably the only thing. I think that's something that in
Okay.
my
Go
twisty
go for
turny
it.
life, yeah, yeah. I think my background, if anybody reads it, my bio, it's wild. It is a nonlinear path. It makes some pieces tie together, and some are like, wait, what? I'm confused. Um, but
Mhm.
I think at the end of the day, the North Star is always super important. Like your why. Like, why are you doing this? I cannot tell you how many lawyers I know that if I ask them, if you could do it all again, would you be a lawyer? Most of them have told me no. If you ask some law students, how's law school? Do you want to be a lawyer? A lot of second and third.
Right.
But you ask someone, are you going to drop out of law school? They say no. And you say, why? And it's like, oh, because I'm already halfway in. I'm already halfway through. I've already spent all this money. I already have all this debt. And again, debt is nothing to be taken lightly, but you're going to trade however many thousands of dollars of debt for a lifetime of misery. Or you've been 10 years in this field and you
Mhm.
hate it, and you're not going to start over because you've put in your dues, you've done this. And some people can't. Some people are not in a position where they can do that. But if you can,
Mhm.
Why are you still there? Like, like follow
Yeah.
it. Like, go figure it out. You can always go back to this thing you hate. I can always go back to development. I can always build buildings. I can always hate it, and I can always make money doing it because I know how to do it. But
Mhm.
we don't. Regret is probably one of the worst things in the world. And for me, I try to live my life
Mhm.
and pursue things where when I get there, when it's my time, that I have as little regrets as possible. Like what's past is past. I can't change any of that stuff. But going forward, I
Mhm.
want to know that I took the leaps or I tried or at least got the clarity versus being too scared to do something. So always follow that North Star and always just go find out. The worst thing that could happen is you're right back where you started. It's not the worst
Yeah.
thing in the world.
I think that's some great advice to leave the listeners with. I do want to get into my little um, lighten up section of the show. Hopefully, my
Yep.
microphone bears with us. I'm trying not to move now. It's like,
Like you're good in this position. Stay here.
all right. I'm trying to like make the most minimal movements as possible. So what are some things
Understood.
that you do for self care?
Oh man. So self-care, two of the biggest things. Um, I go sit by the water a lot. I will often go out there with nothing and just stare at the water and people watch and
Hmm.
make up stories about the people that are there. Or I'll bring a book and read for a minute, but I don't do work at the beach. That's the no. I go to the water, that's what calms me. Um, my other favorite Zen thing is I'll go horseback riding because when I was a
Okay.
kid, they took us to this ranch in Oakland, and I'll never forget. They said, horses can sense fear. So if something
Hmm.
scary is happening around you, if you're scared, the horse is going to be scared. If you're calm, the horse is going to be calm. And there's always been something about being on an animal that's so powerful and guiding it and
Hmm.
being one with it and making sure you have to control your emotions. So literally you don't die. It almost happened to me in the water. My horse ran into the ocean. It was a mess. It was a storm coming. Horse freaked out.
Oh,
But I remembered in that
wow.
moment, oh, it was bad. The other horses were smart and ran up the beach. My horse ran into the ocean. I am a statistic. I cannot swim. Okay. So we're going down. Okay.
All right.
And, I saw, and I remember that lesson, the first horse lesson, like, be calm. And so I saw a big wave come off to the side and I thought, oh my God, this horse is going to freak out. I'm okay. Be scared for like right now. Okay. Stop being scared. And then I like wrapped my arms like in the rain. So I like had like a good grip. The horse goes into the water. It like jumps up, like
Hmm.
hooves up in the ocean. And I'm like trying to talk it down. Like, we're fine. You're going to be okay. You're going to be all right. It's fine. It's fine. Come on, let's go. And we get it back to the shore. And our guide is there just like clapping. I'm like, you were supposed to save me. You stayed on the shore while I did this. But that experience aside, horseback riding has always been very calming, very zen, very chill. So those are my big self cares. I do try to get a monthly massage because I have some knots that live in my shoulders I can never get rid of. Um, but I have a
Hmm.
few of them, and that's progress. I never When people used to ask me, what do you do for fun? I would pause for like 5 minutes because I'm like trying to come up with something else that's not drinking. So I'm like, that's a bad answer. I can't say that. I just met this person. I'm going to have an intervention by the time this is over.
So speaking of drinking, what's your go-to drink?
What kind of night is it?
Oh God, you give me the question. That's a hard question. For me, it's like tequila, and you know, um,
Okay.
so I would say a
If
Friday
it's,
night.
okay, okay. If I'm just chilling and I'm not really trying to turn up, so to speak, I'm having a beer. I'm having
Hmm.
I'm having a lager, preferably an
Okay.
amber, German style Hefeweizen. Those are my faves. If we're like going up, pineapple juice and tequila, best drink ever.
Mm.
I literally call it my
Nice.
go-go juice. So great, so dangerous, so great.
I'm trying to see if I actually ever had pineapple juice. I've had to have had pineapple juice and tequila as much tequila as I've drunk in the past.
You'd be surprised. A lot of
But I'm
orange
more
juice
of a
is really
shots guy,
popular for
so
tequila, so
yeah,
you'd be very surprised.
I've
Doesn't
had
show up a
that
lot.
tequila sunrise.
Hmm.
And what? So, do you listen to music while you work?
Yes, it depends on what I'm doing. Again, different things,
Mm.
different music for different things.
Okay, so if you're doing some coding,
Oh Jesus. I have to either listen to like I have to go to my happy place and listen to like a '90s playlist, or
okay.
I am, or I am going back to my roots and I'm listening to Bay Area hiking music because it'll put me in a good mood and I can do anything when I'm
Mm.
listening to that. I can do any boring, stupid task with either of those two options.
Now, what does Bay Area hiking music sound like?
Are you not familiar with the stylings of Too Short?
Okay,
Actually, Too
yeah.
Short. Well, Too Short's from the Bay. He any Too Short fans out there? He does do hiking music, but he has a very different sound. But it is a lot of like sirens sounds, a lot of synth, a lot of bass, and literally every single song has one to four of the following things: guns, drugs, most likely perp, uh, sex, and scrapers. One to four of those things shows up in
Hmm.
every hypey song. So if you're interested, the team, the federation, keep the sneak, these are all
Oh, I thought you
quintessential
said hiking, like
hyphy
going on a
hyphy.
hiking.
Oh god.
Oh, that's what I'm thinking.
Oh
Like
god.
the
Oh god, no.
like green socks and like what does hiking music sound like? Okay.
I don't know. I don't do it. I wouldn't
That's
know.
why I was lost. I was like, too short. Okay, I
No,
was
no,
like,
no.
I don't really know. I don't know too short as well as I thought I
You
did.
know
Like he's
what?
gotten some cross genre stuff.
Listen, give me some instrumental blow to whistle. Let's go walk in nature and find out. Let's find out.
And then you started like talking about perp and sex and guns. I was like, damn, like what kind of hike is this they're going on? Okay.
That would be a great crossover genre of like a hiking horror film featuring like
Right.
that type of music.
Exactly. It's like, is this a hike through like
Oh,
Crenshaw or Skid Row or something? I
right?
have no idea. Like, okay. I was like,
It's
I definitely have to do
a
some
horror hike
research
through the
on this
hood.
when I get off this call.
Yeah, it's a horror hike through the hood. That's what this
Jordan Peele,
is.
where you're at?
Seriously, let's send him this idea. I think he could do something with it.
Exactly.
Oh god,
He's gonna get and be like, nope.
for real.
Um, what? Okay, so we got the music. We're gonna do a couple of these. Would you rather? Would you rather work for Google or Facebook?
Google.
Mm, okay. Let me see if I can find another good one here. Would you rather be a miserable genius or a happy moron?
Ooh, a happy moron. They say ignorance is bliss, and this for a reason.
Right.
All day, give it to me.
Um. Would you rather see how or what created civilization or see how or what ends civilization?
What's the first option?
see how or what created civilization, or what ended it, or who ended it.
Uh, I'd rather see what ends it because I think knowing the truth would offset too many long held beliefs, and I'm not down for the universe to continue to ruin my life. So, no, just show me how it ends. And hopefully, it's in a timeline that I'm no
Okay.
longer alive already. So, thank you.
Yeah. um, would you rather talk like Yoda or breathe like Darth Vader?
That's a good one. Oh, God. I'd rather talk like Yoda because that's just great. Like talking in riddles and pissing people off. That sounds fun.
It,
At least I can get my
um,
words out. With Darth Vader,
yeah,
I
it
gotta. There's
reminds
so
me
much
of,
pausing. It's like,
all right. Um, it reminds me of an episode of Golden Girls when Blanche told Sophia, she's like, I thought because you look like Yoda, you were wise like him. So it was, it's like, oh, it's a good one. I got to use that one. One more. Let's see if I can find a good one. Would you rather have bad breath or smelly feet?
smelly feet.
Yeah, I think you can hide that better than the breath
Mm-hmm.
thingy. Alrighty, Angelique, I appreciate you being on the show. Do you want to tell the people, the listeners, what other entrepreneurship things that you have gonna, like? Yeah, you guys, you have to check her profile out. If you're on Polywork, check her out on Polywork. I'm kind of doing part of what I'm going to ask you here in a minute, but check her out on Polywork. That profile is crazy. We could be on here talking. This could be like one of those Joe Rogan podcasts because there's just so much to dig into. I saw something like Forbes or like a conference or
Mm-hmm.
something you went to on your
Mm-hmm.
profile that you it's just crazy. Like, this is the most interesting woman in the world. We're going to have to give her that hashtag, that title. Um,
I'll take it. I'll take
and
it. I've
check
gotten a
her
lot of
out
other titles
on.
before.
You'll take it.
So it's better than some other ones I've gotten. So I'll take it. I'll take
um,
it.
so just tell the people like what you have going on, if you have anything that you want them to know about, and where they can reach you at.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to keep up with what I'm doing, then you can check out my personal site. I am angelique.com. That's Angelic. It's spelled the biblical way, pronounced the French way. If you want to see my latest offering, then you would go to toxicambition.com. Or you can Google my full name and my entire catalog will pop up and you can find me there. If you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me at North of Oblivion. Again, it's just North of and Oblivion, all one word. And that's how you can find me. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. I'm pretty responsive. I'm just a giant nerd with way too many dreams. So, but I'm also going to add hashtag most interesting woman in the world to a profile somewhere.
There you go. So we didn't talk about your latest thing. I want to talk about that really quick, and I'll edit it in the conversation somewhere.
Cool, cool,
Your course.
cool.
Could you talk about that really quick?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so the course was really born out of, again, my own personal struggle, kind of everything we've talked about with the injury and thinking about what to do next with life and
Hmm.
not really knowing what I wanted to do. And the course was really just kind of a lifelong thing. I wrote an article about it a few years ago. I think it was 2018 or 2019. I wrote this article and I was just talking. I just needed to get it out. I just needed to share what I was thinking because it was driving me crazy that I let my life get so out of control. And I just shared it with a couple friends and they were like, oh my God, this is me. And I shared it in some groups and they were all like, oh my God, this is me too. Like this, I didn't realize other people were struggling. And what the course does is it really creates a framework for you to go and find your why. Like we talk about unhealthy goal setting, healthy goal setting, perfectionism, boundaries, how to find your own why, like how to find the root cause on your own, and how to keep your ambition in check, because there's no silver
Hmm.
bullet. You're always going to be, if you're ambitious now, you're always going to be ambitious. It's just about finding the balance and keeping it in check. And so really it's built for busy people. It's the exact same content. You can either do it in a structured 6-week course where each week a new module will drop, or you can do the on-demand model, so you can do all the lessons at once, none of the lessons, 3 of the lessons, whatever you want to do. But it's a mix of short videos by me doing voiceover, uh, some worksheets that are really about you doing the work, and then some independent work to think about throughout the week. And I will tell you, I have had friends
Come
and
on, Eon, let's
colleagues
do
take
the
this
work.
course, do the work. I've had some friends and colleagues take the course and literally say, "Oh, the videos are so great." And then I get to the worksheets and I'm like, oh, I don't want to do it. Like, and it's none of it is none of it is rocket science, but it's hard because when we think about our
Hmm.
why, these things get scary and then our body senses it as a threat. And so you want to go into defense. And so your brain's like, no, 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 we're not doing that. We're going to go distract with this other thing. We're going to go doom scroll IG for another 2 hours instead of thinking about this thing. And the reality is, most
Hmm.
of the issues lie underneath that. And so it's really just taking the time to sit there and think about it. When I started doing meditation, I tried it once. I freaked out from what I was feeling. And I was so pissed. I'm like, I can't even meditate right. And I was so upset. I didn't try it for
Hmm.
another year and a half. And then I finally tried it again. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. It's okay. And it's like, oh, this is just something that you're not, like most things, you're not good at right away. You have to keep trying and get used to it. And that's sort of what the course does. It sort of spoon feeds sort of that uncomfortableness in a way where you can start to get into the bigger, hairy, more audacious things. And if you don't do it, you're always going to stay surface level. I hate to talk in absolutes, but honestly, if you don't go inside, whatever it is, you will always stay at surface level. You'll never get to the root why. And you can change your career, you
Hmm.
can change your industry, you can change your, type of work you do, the country you live in, but you can't outrun yourself. You will always come back. And if you
Right.
don't address the root cause, it'll come up again. So do as I say, not as I did. Like, avoid some major burnouts, avoid the flame out. Um, yeah, I will provide a discount code for your listeners that we can put in the show notes also. Um, but yeah, that's the course, and it's really, again, born out of personal experience, research, and again, I've walked this life, and I'm actively trying every day to keep my life healthy and balanced and not drain myself. I still have my passion projects. I still do things. I'm not sitting on my hands, but I also keep my body clock in check and really think about what am I doing? But more importantly, why am I doing that? And does this fill me up? And if it doesn't, cut
Mhm.
it, period.
Nice. So, Angelique, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate you hanging in there with me through all the technical difficulties and everything. It's been a really insightful info. So I appreciate you sharing your story with me and the listeners. And I think that they can take a lot away from what we went over today.
I hope so. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, no problem. Have a good day.
You too.